Welcome back to another great episode of the Adam Talks podcast.
I started out as a wrestler, 10 years Olympic style. So I started when I was about 9 or so.
We said we don't want Bruce Wayne to be old and that's his reason for retiring. He has to have a reason to not be doing this.
I knew I'd always wanted to do it. I never saw myself at a desk job, and anytime I thought of something else, it always brought me back to wrestling.
Man, I don't like fancy pad work. I like realistic pad work. Am I formed? Am I punching correctly? Am I balanced? Like a lot of them guys will hold pads way outside their faces, and it's just, I don't believe in that type of training, man. Like
for a couple promotions, I wrestled under a mask, and we don't talk about those days. Because those days were fun and really embarrassing.
It is the first annual Berryville Film Festival. I'm the founder and festival director for it. So it's exciting to bring something to a small town, something brand new.
I think anything you do in wrestling has to have meaning to it. No matter like facial expressions, the high flying moves, all that stuff like that.
We're back with another great one right here, right now. We are talking to professional MMA fighter Adriana Peret. How's it going?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I mean, this has been a long time coming. Like we said just a second ago, it's almost a year or so since I first contacted you. And little hits and misses, but we finally got you on. Super happy about that. Where did your love for fighting start?
Yeah, no problem. Growing up, they had career day at school. We had to draw out what we wanted to be when we were older on kind of like these paper models, and I randomly chose professional fighter. Just always had that desire and passion in me. And then growing up watching like the Rocky movies and fighting movies, I always loved like dancing and fighting, but fighting definitely was my more so personality. I was pretty vicious growing up. I just loved wrestling around with my guy cousins and trying to choke each other out, and I was always kind of like the athletic tomboy. And then I found out about the gym here in town that was offering free classes, kind of like a community gym. And so I gave it a try. I was 18 at the time, so I've been training, I think, close to 7 years there. Found out it's free, went and tried it. Of course, fell in love with it like I figured I would. But I've always had it in me since I was a little girl.
Wow. Rocky movies are always a big inspiration for people going into the fight game, man. You see Rocky in there fighting Apollo Creed or Clubber Lang or Ivan Drago, man, you're like, I could do that one day. That's going to be me,
Yeah.
It gives you that, like, you're like, yeah, it's one of those things. But,
relatable, like from humble beginnings, it makes it relatable.
Definitely. Were you into any other athletics apart from fighting before you actually got into the fight game?
Oh, for sure. One of my biggest sports was track and field. I did like the 400 meter, 800 meter, and I was doing pretty well at track and field. I was here at Lake Hamilton in 8th or 9th grade, and I was traveling with the high school varsity. We went to Meet of Champs, which is like if you make it past state competition, you go to Meet of Champs. And so I did pretty well at track and field. And then I did, volleyball a couple of seasons, and I did tennis one season, soccer one season. So I've always loved sports and just running around, and I was always kind of I was athletic, into sports like that. But track and field was my biggest kind of shine. I shined in that one the most.
Okay. Do you think that fed into your mentality as far as going into the fight game, big time competitions and stuff like that?
For sure. I think the work ethic definitely transferred from that sport to, it's a whole other level, the fighting game. But I definitely think that work ethic and me, just the competitiveness in me, definitely transferred from track and field. And one time I did track and field and soccer, and they're the same season, and I'd do practices back to back. I'd have to like ice bath just to help my muscles recover. And my coaches were like, "You're just insane," So that mentality definitely probably transferred over.
you gotta get it, man. You gotta go. You gotta train and train and train. If it's something you want, you gotta go after it with everything you got. So, I mean, kudos to you for not giving up and continuing. Was it ever hard to like not stop, or was it always something that was like, no, I'm just gonna keep doing this?
I think for me personally, I've definitely had roller coaster of ups and downs in this sport, especially when you deal with like injuries and stuff. You debate and you start doubting, like, oh, can I bounce back the same? I don't want to have to recover for so long. You know, you make certain plans. I wanted to fight this time. And so stuff like that definitely puts doubts in your head. Or when you lose a fight, or when you just, when even if you don't lose a fight, but you lose a sparring kind, when you're in the gym sparring and you just have rough days, you're just like, am I cut out for this? You definitely go through it mentally. And I feel like this sport, it's like no other sport, and it pushes you to your max mentally. And definitely have struggled with doubts, fears, questions. It's not always positive. If anything, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I deal with that more so than, like, this is my bread and butter. This is definitely something I've dealt with, and I feel like a lot of fighters who are champions and really want to strive to be champions go through those emotions. I feel like the fighters who don't really take it as seriously don't really struggle with those things.
That makes sense. I mean, you go through, like you said, highs and lows and everything. And there's letdowns, like sometimes fights drop out. You miss out on getting into these fights, been training and training, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. So I'm sure that's a lot of high, low emotional stuff as well. The physical toll is a big part of it, but like you were saying, I'm guessing I've never been in a cage and never will attempt to, because I'm not as tough as you are, right? So I can't get in there and do that kind of stuff. So, uh, the physical side's probably bad, but I'm betting the mental side's just as bad, if not worse for you. The mental preparation, the physical preparation, all of it, just, I gotta get it. I gotta be ready. Uh, was there any fights like, all right. So your first fight, what was it like going into that fight? You were ready, I'm sure, but what was it like in your head going into that fight?
I was definitely nervous. I don't think the nerves ever go away, to be honest, but I was, out of all fights, that was probably my most exhausting fight. That and, yeah, and one other fight. But that fight was probably the most exhausting because of how nervous and anxious you are. You don't know what to anticipate. As you fight and gain experience, you're able to, breathe a little better and know what to expect. So, I mean, I remember walking in there, or going in there, and like my first rest round, I was telling my head coach, Dewan Pigney, I was like, man, my legs are dead. My legs were dead even before I even got in the cage. And he's like, that's
Oh,
normal.
wow.
Yeah, my legs are tired. And so I was like, why are my legs so tired? I feel just drained. And he's like, you're drained from the nerves. It's normal. It happens to me. He was telling me, and it wasn't just my legs, actually, it was just my whole body. I was just felt so drained. But thank God I won that fight. I don't know how I felt. I feel like looking back now, I was just so sloppy and not technical. And
Did
so,
you do
yeah.
any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I was just saying, it definitely was nervous and made me very fatigued. Even before I stepped in the cage, I felt like I just got out of a fight.
Man. Did you go straight into professional fights, or did you do any amateur fights first?
Yeah, I have an Emmy record of 5-0, so I went
Oh,
undefeated.
wow.
But that was kickboxing. My first professional fight was also my first MMA fight, so that was an experience of its
Wow.
own. So I only did five, and it was all kickboxing matches. And I wanted to do MMA as amateur, but it was getting tougher and tougher to find opponents. So Dewan suggested we just go ahead and step up to the pros. I'm putting myself on a little timeline of when and how far I want to get with my goals. So that meant having to step up and turn pro sooner than later.
Okay, so what is all right? So what's the difference? I mentioned before we came on here that I had somebody that you have actually fought uh, on the show. Not you didn't fight him on the show. What am I saying? Anyway, I've had somebody on the show that you've previously fought, and they've done bare knuckle boxing and kickboxing and whatnot, jujitsu, yada yada. And I asked them this question: what is the difference in kickboxing and MMA? Apart from the obvious, there's grappling involved. What's the big differences in the two sports?
The gloves to me is getting hit with those gloves is it's different hit. You hitting them and them hitting you. I mean, yeah, getting hit by those gloves are a big difference. And with kickboxing, it's nice because you're able to just throw the combinations, not worrying about having a sprawl and like stuff a takedown. MMA, it's a lot more risky with everything you throw. Have to you have to know what you're doing, definitely a lot more. With kickboxing, you can throw all these beautiful combinations and not worry about someone going for your legs and then, getting finished by getting tapped out or getting submitted. So that's the biggest difference. And then also getting hit by those gloves. That feels
Yeah,
a lot different.
them gloves are a lot bigger in kickboxing than in MMA. MMA gloves are a lot smaller. Uh, and from what I understand, the bigger gloves, it puts a lot more oomph in the punch. Like it's a lot harder of a hit whenever you're getting punched with the larger gloves because they're heavier, right?
I mean, yes, you're covering more like surface area,
Hmm.
but with MMA gloves, it's more a targeted force. So it's a lot more impactful of the area that does get hit. So that's why you see a lot more knockouts in MMA compared to kickboxing. And you see a lot more like cuts and damage. And especially because you can throw elbows and knees. And those are probably your most prominent points to cause damage.
Okay. Did you train MMA before, like, while you were transitioning from the kickboxing to MMA? Did you train for a while you were doing the kickboxing and stuff, or?
I did, yeah. Actually, my first class at the gym was a jiu-jitsu class, so I did try to stick with wrestling and jiu-jitsu as much as I could. Definitely when I had kickboxing fights, my camps are usually 6 to 8 weeks, so would we would just try to focus on kickboxing. And then I moved around as well. I lived in San Diego, California, Dallas, Texas. Whenever I moved, I made sure to find a gym there and stay dedicated. And sometimes the gym was more jiu-jitsu focused or boxing focused, so I just would have to, utilize the classes that were available. But me moving around and then having more like more kickboxing matches instead of MMA is what kind of had to force me to put grappling on the back burner for like I would say a couple years, not too long. But overall, otherwise, I was staying busy with my grappling and ground game for sure.
That probably helps though, being at different camps. You know, like you said, you moved around a lot, but you're getting to experience different people's teachings, different ways, different styles of doing things. So you may catch an opponent off guard with a certain kick or a certain punch or whatever that it may be that you're throwing. Or if you are practicing grappling at any of these other gyms at any point, you may learn a different type of takedown. I hate it when my words don't work. But you may learn different stuff that they may not have seen, so it can help out. Have you been able to do that? Find different various things to implement into your arsenal to help you out during a fight?
um, you know, putting everything together is definitely being a martial artist and fighting is definitely an art of its own. But I would have to like contribute my successes to my head coach, Duan Pickney. He has the fact that I have a coach that has like lived the game and he has fought as many times as he's fought and he knows the game and he's really able to connect the art so well of striking while stepping takedowns or shooting a takedown, cage work, just really implement everything so well to where it can come together like a puzzle piece. Um, Otherwise, the boxing gyms I've been at or the high level jiu-jitsu gyms I've been at, it definitely probably helps kind of fine tune some things, but the most, you know, the thing that's helped me the most is Dewan's coaching. He knows how to transition everything very beautifully. I mean, I have to give all credit to him with that.
Man, he was one of my first special guests that I ever had on my show, and he has so much knowledge. Like he's like a he's like a book, man. You can just ask him anything, he'll flip to the page and be like, "This is how you do it. This is what this is. This is why this is done." You know. So you can
Right.
learn a lot. I feel like I learned a lot in our I think 45-minute conversation that we had, just by talking to him. You know, sitting next to him, being like, what about this? How about this? Whenever you were fighting for these, what was this? It's just really cool having a fountain of knowledge that's there to help you in your journey as a fighter or whatever it may be that you're doing under him, whether it's just self defense or anything. The guy's a fountain of knowledge.
Yeah.
Take us back to the very first time you ever went to Off the Chain MMA gym. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I know I had like looked up their Facebook or Google, or I think so. My cousin was originally going there, and he had told me about the free classes. I was in nursing school at the time. It was winter break, so I was finding something to do. And he told me, "Hey, there's free classes here." So I looked them up on Google or Facebook. Then I hit up their Facebook, and I think Chauncey was there. I think Duan was out of town with the traveling with the fighter for one of their fights, and showed up. Wasn't too many people there. Probably a couple people there. And it was, I think, like I said, grappling. I think on a Wednesday night. So I remember going over arm bars. I still remember it to this day. And since then, I was going there every day, twice a day when I could. Again, being in nursing school sometimes made it pretty difficult to maintain the balance with everything. And then I was still living with my parents at the time, so still going to church and going to all the practices they wanted me to go to. And I definitely grew up more traditional with my parents, and my dad didn't want me to stick with it, but I ended up sticking with it. He just wanted me to kind of go try it out, and hey, the trial's done now. You got to focus back on school. And I was like, I can do both, I promise. And so yeah, I just kept going as much as I could, and thankfully that was summer breaks. I remember I was going twice a day, every day. I was loving it.
Man, I like I said like I said a little bit earlier. I mean, that training for whether it was soccer, whether it was track or whatever, that drive probably helped for it to make an easier transition into your first day in there. Because you had to practice every day while you were in school for all of those things, and then you come into this and you're like, all right, we're back at it, we're back in the gym, back to doing something, but it's different. Uh, was it a cool experience? Was it an experience that you were like, finally? Was it like finally whenever you finally got to go and do something like that, got to train in professional fighting?
Yeah, I was definitely uncomfortable because I had no experience. I was, starting from scratch. I didn't grow up getting to do taekwondo or jiu-jitsu like some fighters do, which that would have been awesome. But it is what it is. That just made me go in overdrive even more to catch up. But definitely felt uncomfortable, especially like, well, this is your fighting stance. This is how you throw 1-2, You definitely don't get that rhythm until later on. So it was uncomfortable learning the technique at first, kind of awkward, I should say, not uncomfortable. But definitely had the epiphany, like, this is what I've been meaning to do. Like, this is my purpose. Yeah, I'm finally doing my purpose. It just definitely made me step more into my confidence and kind of self-reflect, like, this is what I've been wanting to do all along, for sure.
Did the prep for did the prep for your kickboxing change, like not change, was the prep for your kickboxing different than the prep that you would do today for your MMA fighting, like as other than the obvious grappling?
By far, for sure. Even if it's things as simple as not running on spar days because you want to be able to spar a lot more rounds and not kill your legs. whenever you're boxing or kickboxing, you do plenty of running. MMA, though, you're wrestling and grappling and sparring, a lot more MMA sparring. So small things like that that are cardio or stamina focused. So weight lifting, conditioning like that. And then the obvious drilling. You want to drill takedowns, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. You want to be able to do all styles and not just focus on one. But I would say more so the cardio and conditioning is definitely different as well.
Okay. Let's go ahead and let's look at your first fight. Your first professional MMA fight. What was your game plan going into that? And do you feel that you, achieved and accomplished the game plan as you planned for it?
So, to be honest, if I were to go back, I would have done an amateur MMA fight first, just to get the feel of those gloves. Because I went again from amateur kickboxing, helmet. Well, no, I had a fight or two without helmets. But I would want to get the feel of those gloves, get the feel of stand up, takedown, going to the ground, getting back up, striking, just the transition of everything before turning pro. But I can't sit here and live in regret either. You just live and learn. We definitely had a game plan, and you get in there, and you kind of like, was that even me fighting? Everything went out the window because, again, I was not kind of familiar with that. Even just throwing a punch just felt awkward. So, um, yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and it felt pretty foreign since I've never done it before. And then that week, with fighters, we usually have to do weight cuts, like go to the sauna or in the tub. So I actually had COVID that week, and I had a fever, and I didn't even have to lose any weight in the sauna because I sweated it all out my fever. And I honestly probably should have pulled from that fight, but it was in my hometown. I had so much support coming. I was stubborn, and I was definitely gassed in that fight, and it 100% was due to that uh, sickness, and definitely plan to rematch her and dominate.
Definitely, definitely. Uh, Overall, your performance, you said earlier, as far as your first fight goes, you said you could do better, you could have done better. You look at it and you're like, I was so sloppy and everything. What do you think you did right in that fight?
I mean, my striking, I'm usually pretty confident in my striking. Uh, Keeping pressure on her against the cage, kind of looking for stuff like that. Cage work, I really got an idea in that fight. But I'm so disappointed in that fight. I don't even. That's why it's like a personal goal of mine to rematch her, because I plan for that to be my only loss and to rematch her and hopefully, get the victory to where it's kind of like scratch and even to me.
Yeah. Was that, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a submission loss, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What do you think was it couldn't have been under preparation. You said it was probably mainly 100% the sickness that you were suffering from, yeah?
Well, the sickness, and I hate excuses, but um, I did have a sickness that week. I'm a nurse practitioner myself, so I know,
Okay.
what is what should have been done and not. And I was dealing with a fever for a few days, like I said, sweated all. I'd sweat like 10, 15 pounds just from the fever instead of going to the sauna, like I said, just from being sick. But definitely my grappling game was not the same. Since then, we opened up our own Real Deal grappling program, and so we have an official jiu-jitsu program. I've been doing that religiously. I ranked up, got a couple stripes recently, so um, definitely have improved big time on my jiu-jitsu and my cage work. Night and day difference to me. I also had a surgery last April, I think, and so my first pro fight was in January, so that was under a year of recovery, and it was a hip surgery, so it was a big deal. And so in jiu-jitsu, hips is everything. If you can't shrimp out, if you can't, elevate your hips to go for submissions. And so I was dealing with a lot of like hip fatigue post surgery, just recovering from that. So now that I've been doing a lot more grappling, it's been conditioning my hips a lot stronger, and just my technique has improved significantly as well. But I was definitely not as prepared as I should have been for the ground. My ground game is night and day difference. At least I feel like.
Well, definitely. I mean, if it was almost like a year and what did you say it was almost a year that you were recovering from your surgery?
Um, so I had the surgery in April and I fought in January. So it was under a
Okay.
year.
Okay. I thought you were saying from January to April. I'm like, that's 4 months. That's not long at all. But
Yeah.
I was incorrect in my hearing on that. So, uh, so moving forward from that fight, you're gonna call that person out. You're gonna take them next time, right? Right. Anyway, moving forward to the second fight, uh, you fought Jessica Link. I imagine that fight you felt went much better as far as game plan and mentality than the first fight. Yeah.
Yes. It was back in my hometown again, so I definitely had the pressure on me, and especially from losing my first pro fight, I I was putting even more pressure on myself. Like I cannot lose twice in a row in front of my people again. So of course I'm always putting that pressure on myself, and I'm glad it went the way it did. At first we just kind of dabbled around. We got our distance, jabbed around. I feel like she's a boxer. I really like boxing, so we both kind of understood we had to play the distance. We could both be dangerous, so we kind of we were feeling each other's range and stuff. And eventually, I just was able to take it to the ground and finish TKO.
Man, what is some things you can look back on that fight and say, well, I probably could have done better in that, if there are any.
Uh, Definitely exchanges. I kind of at one point had rushed her to the cage and worked on the cage a little bit, and then we went to the ground. And at one point, she had me in a guillotine, but I fought that and was able to pass that. But I had a lot of mistakes even on the ground with her, like like there were submissions there that I could have gone for, or just kind of getting more dominant positions even on the ground. But I would say striking. I would have liked to exchange more and do some more combinations.
Okay. What what are the positives apart from the win? Because you got that W in that one.
Yes. The positives mentally. It definitely taught me a lot mentally. Um, and just the experience is a positive. Just the whole kind of from start to finish, from going to weigh in, rehydrating, getting your weight back up, and fight day, waking up and making sure you get good rest, and just mentally, you're even doing stuff weight weigh-in day, fight day. You're just mentally preparing, and well, really, you meant to prepare by not thinking of the fight until it's time to walk out to the fight. So just stuff like that to keep your nerves at a low, and how you're warming up in the back, and just the whole experience taught me so much. The more you go through that, the more you're able to control your emotions better, and kind of breathe through everything, and mentally train yourself every time how to handle it better and better. Because, like I said, the nerves don't go away. You just learn how to cope with it maybe a little bit better each time.
Now, like I said, I've had other MMA. I've had MMA fighters on here. I've had Solo Hatley, Dewan. I've had Jessica Link. I had her on here, and I've had Donovan Beard on this show. And I've asked them all this same question. I was going to ask you about it. Is it different? Because I'm a professional wrestler. I have been until recently. And the crowd is everything in wrestling. You got to interact with the crowd, and you got to be like, yeah, if you're a bad guy, and be like, yeah, if you're a good guy or whatever. In MMA, you got to block the crowd out and focus on your coach. Is that something that's difficult, or is it always just came natural to be able to tune into your coach?
It's definitely something that needs to be trained, like any other skill. So whenever you're sparring at the gym, you're going through certain drills, you got to be able to lock in on your opponent while listening, whether that's your drilling partner or your sparring partner. So it's definitely a trained skill. To me, it didn't come natural, and I'm sure to a lot of people, because it's human to get distracted, you know. Um, as far as the crowd goes, yeah, the the energy from the crowd is awesome, and like walking out and up until you get greased, that's when I'm locked in. When I'm about to step in the cage, then I'm zoned in. And maybe when they call you out and you're in your corner, you want to work the crowd up, but after that, I'm zoned in. I don't hear anything. I mean, even if I do, I'm trained to block that out and just listen to my corner, because it can
Wow.
cost
See,
you the it can cost you the
yeah.
fight. It can cost you getting hurt. You don't want to. The people in the stands most of the time don't know what they're talking about. So you got to listen to your trained professional, your corners that do.
Yeah, you got them sideline coaches out there screaming, get their leg! No, no, the other one! No, no!
Right?
And then your coach is like, just be calm. Wait, wait, wait. And you're just like,
Yeah.
For me, it would be so hard because, like I said, I've been a professional wrestler since 2022, so we live off of the crowd's energy. It would be difficult after being able to feel that rush and playing into it to just be like, mute them. You are the focus coach. I'm listening to you. That would
Yeah.
be so difficult. It would be super foreign, like you said it was for you. It would definitely be that for me. So kudos to you for being able to learn that skill and that be able to put it into action. Uh, you reached out to me and asked if we could do this podcast like a little before your most recent fight. Let's talk about that fight. How did it go for you?
Yeah, my best performance yet. Uh, I am definitely goods and bads. Of course, as soon as I stepped out of there, I'm not satisfied. I did this wrong and that. I mean, I was having that post victory high. Everybody's coming up to you, good job. That part was good. But then I go back and watch the video, or just thinking about it later that night. Man, I could have got caught like this. That could have easily, the tables could have easily turned. I'm never satisfied with my performance, but I'm always grateful. I don't know how to explain it. There's goods and bads to every fight. I try to, especially when me and Dewan look over the footage and he's like, "Oh, you did this good," and "Oh, this was not the best." So we definitely study everything and go back over it. But for the most part, I'm never content with how I perform.
Well, I mean, in the fight game, you have to be like that, I assume. But you did get the win. You did get the win from what I've seen, right?
Yes, yes, I'm happy that we were able to exchange a lot more. My opponent came from London, so I was, well,
Oh,
not
wow.
flew from London, but she's like a couple hours like south of London on some island, right? I don't know, but from England. So it was our first, like the promotion's first international fight. I was RDC's first title fight, and now it's the first like international fight. So I was super excited to have an opponent from overseas. But at the same time, that puts pressure on you, because now you're crossing the pond. You may be messing with a different breed of folks. I don't know. You start putting pressure on yourself. But yeah, I was excited. She was super tough. I was putting combinations on her, and she was still pressing forward. I really had to use my footwork, head movement, and she caught me too. She tagged me a few times pretty well. Um, Nothing that rocked me though, thankfully. But I was able to use a lot more of my kickboxing skills and kind of combine everything like the one and I had been working on, from cage work to the ground and pound, If we get back up, get back to striking. So I was just able to really experience MMA in this last fight, and I enjoyed that.
Well, I mean, getting the win is one thing, but getting the win against the first ever international fight for RDC, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. I mean, that that must like you said. All right, you said you're never satisfied, but you're happy with the result. I can understand that. As a MMA fighter or any kind of athlete, you're always pushing yourself to do better and better and better. So the smallest little things are gonna be like, no. No, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. But that would put me on a whole nother level in anything I'm doing. If I'm able to do like stuff in competition with someone who's like at another level, either a whole nother level or from a completely different area that I imagine being able to compete against. So that's
Yeah.
pretty freaking significant. You know what I mean? That's pretty awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
so have you had the chance to help some younger fighters?
Duan and I both coach a kickboxing class, and we just opened up a kids jujitsu program as well. So I've been coaching with a youth program for a few years now, and I feel like that's another purpose of mine. I wear a lot of hats, and I just don't want to give any of them up. I love coaching the kids, the youth program, especially when they come up to you and they come to your fights and they just tell you how they want to be like you when they grow up. It's like, how can you stop doing that type of stuff when you inspire kids and in a good way when they look up to you whenever they have that standard of I want to be like you when I grow up. It's just one of the most amazing feelings, to be able to inspire, especially the next generation.
I imagine you're like some little girl's female Rocky. You looked up to Rocky in the movies and they're looking up to you like, Adrian! And you're like, hey, yeah, you gotta do that punch a little straighter, but you're doing all right. Keep going.
Yes. It's-
But you're gonna be their Mickey. So you're gonna be like their Mickey training them like, come on, you can do better than that, you bum. Whatever. But, but so what has been the most difficult part as far as your training has gone in MMA? What has been the most difficult thing for either you to pick up or for you to be able to add into your repertoire as far as your skill set goes?
um I would say cage work only because I learned it later down the line. So I probably would have been best to learn it earlier on along with the other styles of, grappling and striking. But cage work, I would say that just because some gyms even leave it out completely. They just wrestle, grapple, strike, but they don't have a cage to do cage work on, and we do. So implementing cage work has made a huge difference. And I would say it's that area, just because, like I said, I implemented it later on in the game.
Okay. Um, do you have long-term goals for being a fighter, or is it more teaching? Like, as far as
You said
going like,
long-term goal?
yeah, do you have like long-term goals as far as being a fighter goes? Like maybe getting to a PFL or UFC or one fighting championship, something like that? Or is it more kind of like, well, I would like to be able to do that, but also, kind of want to teach the younger generation as well once I get, a good amount of fights under my belt.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy coaching. Um, I definitely always want to train and coach. Most likely coach. It depends if I have that opportunity. If I'm blessed to have the opportunity later on, but if I am, I always would like to train and coach for the rest of my life. Compete, I am dedicated only to a short amount of time. I would say the next 3 or so years, and within that timeline, I do want to become a UFC champion.
Ooh, I could see it happening. You're driving determination now. I don't think I've seen I don't think I've seen or talked to many people that has the drive that I'm hearing in you whenever you're talking. Because everything you've done from what you've told me, everything you've done, you've had a drive to be the very best at whatever it is you're doing. You know, you went through school. While you were in school, you were training for, you started training in fighting. Then you started doing amateur kickboxing. And then after a little bit of that, you were like, well, let's do the MMA thing. And then you're a nurse practitioner as well. And now you're training kids in two different disciplines, in jujitsu and in kickboxing. You're like doing everything. So if
Yeah.
anybody could do it, I could definitely see you making it to that point.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, if anybody deserves their flowers, I would say it would be you for all the hard work you put in. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
Definitely,
It gets
definitely.
discouraging sometimes. Like it definitely gets, you know, all that pressure on you definitely sometimes just makes you want to ball up and just quit. Like, okay, this is too much. But
Yeah.
my biggest motto has, it's not easy. It's definitely not. Whoever sees that, it's definitely a day-to-day struggle sometimes. Sometimes I have my thoughts of quitting and doubts, but that's when I know I need to push through that because it's close. Because that's usually the nature of the beast.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit earlier about going through that injury in April and then having to wait all the way till January. I was going to ask, did that take a big mental toll on you?
It did mentally, like coming back to my first fight, just because like I felt rusty, and the longer you spend out of the cage, the more rusty you get, the more nervous you get. If you fight back to back, it's not near as uh, much of a toll on you mentally. It's a different mental play for sure. But it did play a toll on me because my recovery was pretty long. I was on crutches, just on crutches for like 4 to 5 weeks. And then after that, I had to learn to walk again, just simple stuff like that. And then I kicking, grappling, like that seemed like a long ways away, but eventually I saw the light at the end of the tunnel and I got there. But that was definitely pretty rough.
Yeah, well, I'd imagine it would be if you had to have hip surgery and then you had to wait and get back. You had to wait and wait, and then it's like it's never coming. That would be my mentality if something happened and I was like, I don't know, in better shape than I'm in and trying to wrestle at a higher level or whatever, uh, and continuing to wrestle. And then something happened to me where I had to have surgery or something. I'd be like, well, this is never happening again. I'm not getting back out there. Did those kinds of thoughts ever hit you?
Oh yeah, I feel like everybody deals with those thoughts. You got a fight coming up and you get injured in training, or you get injured from the last fight and you're like, "Well, that puts a wrench in my plans." And sometimes we don't like things not going as planned, so it makes things more difficult. But it's all about, are you going to sit here and overcome it, or are you going to let it, drop you and fold? Are you going to just get back up and keep pushing?
Yeah, it's all like old Rocky said in the Rocky Balboa movie. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I I think that's a very good saying to live by, especially if you're doing something and it's hard. I feel like everybody faces uphill battles in whatever it is they're doing in life. It's about if you're willing to walk up that hill, or if you're going to say that hill's too big and I just can't do it.
Yeah.
I think that you're doing amazing stuff, and you're still really early in your fight career. So sky's the limit for you. I think you're doing awesome, and like I said earlier, give you your flowers. You know what I mean? Um, as far as MMA, did you watch a lot of MMA before getting into like while you were kickboxing or anything like that? Did you watch any UFC or anything like that?
Yeah, I've definitely, especially knowing that I want to get there one day, I've studied my weight class a little bit. You know, I focus on my camp so much. Sometimes I didn't have time to watch TV, but whenever I could, I absolutely loved watching UFC fights or any fights. I like watching boxing, kickboxing matches, but yeah, I really enjoyed UFC, and uh, especially knowing the 125-pound division, the girls in that weight class. Definitely loved watching them and how they fight as well.
Well, that question being asked, do you happen to have a Mount Rushmore of your MMA, like top MMA fighters ever?
For girls or just in general?
Just all around, any of them.
I really respect Valentina Shevchenko. She definitely respect her and her style as a fighter. Joanna, I don't know, I'm not even gonna butcher her last name, but she's Polish, she's a great fighter as well. Khabib, I really like Khabib. He's a great respected fighter. I think I like his mindset more than anything. It's just mental focus and discipline. Um, who else? I like Rose, her attitude, and I kind of relate to her mentally. Like, hey, we may have started later. I don't know how late Rose started, but I think she started when she was a teenager as well. But she kind of just shows that you can climb to the top as well as long as you put your mind to it. Um, there's so many great fighters out there, but I would say my top two are Valentina and Khabib.
Okay. All right. Yeah, whenever I was watching, my brother watches fights all the time. Him and his girlfriend go to Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever, and they'll just sit and watch fights and eat wings or whatever the heck they do while they're there. I don't know. I used to watch fights, but I used to watch fights, but not like live or anything. The time period when I was watching them here and there was more like Matt Hughes and Vanderlei Silva and Chuck Liddell and Rich Franklin and Rampage, all those fighters, man. And they were just like stand and bang for the most part, man. They were just like throwing heavy blows. Like, you're getting a show if you're watching Vanderlei Silva and Rampage Jackson fight each other. You know what I mean? It was just
Yeah,
nuts watching that.
it's so different back then and now.
I think one of the questions I would definitely like to ask you next would be, what do you feel like the state of Arkansas's MMA scene is like?
I was actually looking on Tapology the other day. A lot of the girls in Arkansas haven't turned pro yet, and I'm ready for them to turn pro because that's the only way up that ladder. That's the only way you're gonna broaden the scene. I mean, sure, there's a lot of amateurs and there's a good crowd of. I guess I'm just thinking about the females more so, but when I'm thinking about the whole MMA scene, like you say, there's a pretty good community. I mean, in every main city in Arkansas, you can find an MMA community to go and train in, and we're all pretty, well connected, especially because of Dewan and our promotion, Real Deal Championship. We offer the fighters great opportunities to be able to fight, and we bring fighters from all over the nation and now international. So that gives the Arkansas MMA community great opportunities to fight and showcase their skills. I would say we don't cross train as much as we probably could, but sometimes that's just hard to do. With traveling and making time, but we have done that recently as well, going to Conway and sparring, or boxing sparring, going to Muay Thai gyms, or going to grapple at more grapple focused gyms. They're definitely out there, and we should utilize each other a lot more to advance our game.
I mean, you got UFC fighters that fight out of Arkansas, like Bryce Mitchell, TJ Brown. I mean, TJ ain't in the UFC anymore, but he's doing all kinds of things right now. AJ Cunningham, and then I think hasn't TJ and AJ both fought for RDC at one point or another? If I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
they both have, I think.
they actually have, yeah.
And then not only that, but you got all the people from Real Deal, past and present. So past, I'm speaking of Solo Hatley Jr. Then you got Chauncey Foxworth, Donovan Beard also was part of the Arkansas scene at one point. Now I think he's Texas. I'm not sure. He may be Arkansas still, but I'm not sure. There's just a bunch of awesome fighters from Arkansas. You're included on that list as well because, like, no one has the determination or drive that I've seen, even in a conversation, as I've heard from you speaking about your career in fighting, none of those people, maybe Dewan, but he was talking more about the past and how he did stuff back then because now he's training, so it's not about the fight game right now for him. It's about training the next generation of fighters. But as far as people that I've talked to, you and Solo, I believe, are the two most like laser sighted into what you're doing and getting better. I haven't seen anybody as intense as you when I've seen the highlights of your stuff. And I haven't heard anybody talk as focused as you have in this conversation about a career. I don't think in any of my conversations that I've had with people on the show. It seems like this is the one thing, like you said at the beginning, that you've wanted to do pretty much since you started watching those Rocky movies years ago. So, I mean, super, super big amount of kudos to you. You know what I mean? You've done it. You've made it. Professional fighter, championship fight, fought against international fighters, and that's just within your first 3 fights. So, sky is the limit for what you can do. Thank you for coming on the show, Adriana. I appreciate it. Usually we end the show. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to say so much. I was saying thank you. In Thailand, they go, Muay Thai, you do that a lot.
Okay. At the end of the show, usually I'm a super big guy about gratefulness, like a super grateful guy for so many different things because, why wouldn't you be? If you have opportunities that come to you or that you reach out and finally get to get them, why wouldn't you be grateful for whatever comes your way? Very grateful guy. And at the end of each show, usually I'll say 3 things that I'm thankful for or grateful for, and I'll give my guests the same opportunity. For me, it doesn't change that much really at all. The first one is my support system, my beautiful wife, my 2 beautiful daughters, my mom, my dad, my brother, anybody who supported me in doing literally anything that I've done, whether it's wrestling, audio dramas, movies, music, podcasts, any of it. I couldn't do anything that I do without my support system behind me, backing me up and saying, you got this, just keep going, you're going to do great at it, whatever it is. So I couldn't do it without them, very grateful for them. Number 2 is, you, the guests that come on the show, because if I'm being honest, really, you didn't have to come on the show. You didn't have to message to ask to come on the show. I'm just some random guy that likes talking to people. So I appreciate very much for anybody who chooses to come on my show. Very grateful for the guests that come on. Very, very grateful for it. And 3, it's kind of a twofer. My health, I'm very grateful that I have good health mentally and physically. It wasn't too long ago that I had an accident and I had to miss work for like 2 weeks straight because of it. So I'm very grateful to have my health, that I didn't have not that long ago. And I'm very grateful for the good Lord above because without him, nothing's possible. And with him, everything is possible. So Adriana Peret, in this moment, what are 3 things you're grateful for?
God, first and foremost. Without him, we are nothing. So that's the first and foremost. Second, my community as well. My support system, my community. I would not be where I'm at in all the areas and all the hats I wear without each and every person that has supported me, encouraged me, just helped me in some what may seem small way to them, but a huge way to me, So support system, community, every single person in my community is impactful more than some of them even realize. And third, I would say opportunity. Opportunities are a blessing. you gave me the opportunity to come and speak on this show. You know, you reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to come on the show?" Sure. I know it took a year for me to come back and say, "Hey," you know, putting it off, but just opportunities and connections and opportunities are provided through the people we know. It's not what you know, but who you know. And so connections are just so important. So I would say those are my top three. And I absolutely love that you do this at the end of every talk.
Definitely. Oh, definitely three things worthy of being grateful for. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for giving us the time of day and being so cool and giving us a little bit of a look inside of your life and what you've done with your career. I appreciate it so much. If people wanted to find you on social media to follow you or check out what you're doing, where could they find you?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Adriana Peret. You just look me up. I think my Instagram is Adriana, period, like a period, then Peret. So, but yeah, Adriana Peret, Adriana, last name Peret, the Romaniac.
There you go. Right on. Well, thank you once again for coming on here. I really appreciate it. It means so much to me. You have a great rest of your night, Adriana.
Adam, you as well.
Come join the fun.